Welcome to the S.E.M podcast. I'm your solo host tonight, Zach Hewlett, and tonight we're joined by our friend Andrew Merrick. Andrew, it's so good to have you on tonight. What part of the world are you calling from?
Calling from Rexburg, Idaho.
Very good, Rexburg. Cool. Well, we didn't talk about this before we started, but have you been listening to the podcast, Andrew?
I have. I've got the whole outline down of how you. So hopefully you don't go too far off of that. I might be a little thrown
No,
off.
I'll let you take the reins. If you want to just run, by all means, get us kicked off.
So if I got it correct, it's kind of pre-mission leading up to the call, post-mission to now, and going back after that into the mission.
You got it. That's it.
All right, sounds good. Well, pre-mission. That is a long story, long interesting story. So I'll try and keep it short. Do I have like a time? Is it just
Just go.
talking?
Just
Because
go.
I've seen a bunch of these, and I'm like, some are like 2 hours, some are one, and I'm probably going to be a 2 hour one. No, I'm just kidding.
No,
I don't know.
you take the time you need. That's the funny thing is everybody's like, is there a time limit on this? No, there's not. With as long as it's within reason. Like if I'm in bed before 11 o'clock, that's always great.
We'll take it. Well, it all started in 1987 when I was born. No, I was kidding. I'll go a little bit past that before the leading up to the call. So I'm a convert to the church. So I found out about the church when I was 18. In high school, I was graduating high school, and I had three friends who were members of the church there in Southern California, where I'm originally from, Orange County. Um, and when I was down there, I was working, and I had these three guys who were all LDS, and they were just I kind of had them as side friends. They weren't my main friends, but I hung out with them sometimes at school, and somewhat of acquaintances. And at the time, I was working at Starbucks, and so I was getting up early, working at 4 a.m. On a Sunday, and one of my friends had invited me in between conference sessions in April of that year, 2006, to come to their house. They had like a little get together with a bunch of people in the ward, and he just said, "Hey, do you want to come?" And I said, "Sure." And then I got off at like 11, and I was ready to go take a nap. I was so tired after getting up at 4 and going to work, and
Yeah.
so I was actually driving past the freeway exit where he was, and he called me again. He's like, "Hey, are you still coming?" And I was like, "Yes, I am." So I curved off and got off on the exit there, and that was the start of everything. I got off, went to his house, and while I was sitting there, he had a bunch of church members at the house, and that was my first time at his house. And I sat there. I didn't know anybody really, and so I went into his like family room where it was quiet, and I found the Book of Mormon for Latter Day Saint families. And so I was curious about it. I know he was a Latter Day Saint. I didn't know much about it, um, but I was just there quietly, and I started reading I opened the first pages and read the testimony of Joseph Smith, and I was just curious about it, and it felt really familiar, but kind of invasive. I felt like I shouldn't ask questions
Hmm.
to my friend because I, up to that point, I had some Christian background, but my mom was married. My stepdad was Jewish, and so we were mostly involved in Judaism. And so in Judaism, it's not really a proselyting type of religion.
Yeah.
And so for me, I was like, "This is your thing. I don't want to like ask questions about it because it's your religion and it's sacred and it's important to you." Little did I know they have people like designated to do that, young
Yeah.
men missionaries. And so, like, not only they wanted me to learn more. So I shut the book and I acted like I wasn't reading it. And and uh, his mom actually caught me and said, "Hey, I think would you like to come to church with us?" And so I said, "Oh, sure, why not?" And I came to church for the first time, and I was sold the first time I walked into the church building. So I walked in, and I've been prepared for it, um, and I was what they called a golden investigator. Was ready for it, and just took all the steps. So I started investigating the church. Received a confirmation about Joseph Smith and the Book of Mormon in a pretty powerful way. and decided to be baptized. And so when I was baptized August 5th, 2006. And um, right before I was baptized, one of the members in the ward bought me tickets to go to EFY. And so that was interesting. Yeah, so I went up to Santa
Wow.
Barbara to EFY before I was baptized, and I had a great time, and so much spiritual experiences, learning about the church and culture and other things like that. Um, and then I got back on like Friday or Saturday, and then I got baptized. Well, I got back on Friday, was baptized Saturday, and then Sunday went to youth conference in Utah from Southern California. So then we were at BYU for a week, and just completely inundated with the gospel and just on a high that I couldn't even explain, of feeling the spirit and feeling the truth of everything. And so shortly after I was baptized, as happens a lot of times, I was the only member in my family, and I received some opposition. My dad was very unhappy about it. He was a born again Christian, and he would call me. I was in community college at this point, and a local community college, and he would call me and threaten me and tell me that if I don't leave the church, if I stay in it, then I won't be able to talk to my family. I wouldn't be able to talk to my little sister anymore, and so it just became really difficult. And he sent me some anti-Mormon things, um, and I was starting to like struggle. It's a new life, new lifestyle, and kind of felt like I didn't fit in some ways. Um, and so I became really devastated, feeling that maybe this was wrong, maybe this is the wrong thing.
Hmm.
And I was reading the Book of Mormon every day at that point, and I didn't feel like it after that. And I remember recognizing the Spirit really strongly, telling me pick up the Book of Mormon where I picked up and left off. And I picked up on the next chapter, which is Alma 30, which talked about Korihor and the Antichrist and how he would lead people away. And I realized that it was an answer to my prayers, that there was the same situation I was going through with the anti-Mormon stuff. And so that kept me going. And I was super back to being excited again, and never turned back after that. So had my little trial. Still had issues with my dad and all of that, but ultimately I knew right away I wanted to prepare to go on a mission. So I started. I was in college, but I wanted to go to seminary. I felt like I really needed to get ahead of things, being not in the church for 18 years, not knowing anything about it.
Yeah, of course.
And so I went to early morning seminary before I went to college classes. They let
Wow.
me do that, which was really nice. But I wanted to, and I was just loving it. Like I was just like, this is so awesome. And all the kids were like half asleep, and I'm just like wide awake and ready to learn. And so I decided to go on a mission. But when I decided that, my my mom had I was living with my mom in California. My dad was in Indiana, and my mom, who I was living with, was fine with me in the church. She was kind of neutral about it. But she was a nurse, and we made an agreement that I wouldn't go on to a mission until I got my associate's degree. She was really wanted me to get some education first before I went, and I reluctantly agreed to it. And I was like, yeah, I want to respect my mom, and I want to respect that. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to go right away. And then the Lord worked on her in a different way. So my mom's a nurse, and one of the doctors, which I didn't know this at the time, was LDS. And she was venting to the doctor about me joining this church and going on a mission, and how I want to go on a mission and disrupt my whole life and all this. And he bore his testimony to her, to her surprise too,
Wow.
uh, of his missionary work and how it's helped him to prepare to become a doctor and how it helped him be a better student and all of this stuff. And she came home that night and was like, "Do you still want to go in a year?"
Oh my
And I
gosh.
said,
Wow.
"Yeah, I do." And so I still continue to prepare for that. And one of the other things I did to prepare, which was really helpful for me on my mission, so that's why I wanted to bring it up, was um, I really wanted to have a missionary experience to be able to help bring somebody in the gospel. And I was talking to everybody. Like, I was new, so I was like, come to church with me. I had my Catholic friends, I had my Christian friends, I had like everybody just come to church. And I was praying for that person. I was like, come on, I really want to have this. And I was at work one day, and this young lady was talking to another girl that was working there, and she was like, all I heard her say was, I wouldn't mind being a Mormon one day. And I was like,
What?
and so I run over to her and I'm like, hey, I am preparing to be a missionary. Can I do practice lessons with you? And I want to be a better missionary. Can I just like practice with you? And she was like, yeah, for sure. And she ended up getting baptized. I ended up baptizing her before my mission.
Oh my
And
gosh, that's so
uh,
cool.
it was really awesome. And so I got to have this member missionary experience. And going into the Scotland Edinburgh Mission in 2007, as we learned later on, member missionary work was huge. So I was able to bear my testimony of that,
Yeah.
of that part of it, not just my conversion, but the other part of it. And so that was really cool. My mission call, I was in Indiana when I got my mission call. So my mission call went to California, where I was living. I was visiting my dad in Indiana when it came, and I knew it was going to be coming in that time. I was there for like 2 weeks, and it came like right in the middle of that. And my dad said when I got there, because he was still very anti, um, he said that when you get your call, I don't want to know. I don't know want to know where you're going. I don't care. So don't share it with me. And so I was like, okay, that's fine. And that morning, I had gone aside and I ended up doing the call with my mom and a bunch of friends. So I called with my mom on the phone, and all my friends were at my house, and I took the phone call and heard my mission call
Wow.
over the phone. And so I'm so excited, but I couldn't share it with anybody I was with, not my sister, not my dad, or anything like that. And I'm just like bursting with just like all these thoughts and emotions and excitement. And that day, we went to a gardens up in Chicago, and there was this Scotland garden, and I just sat there for like ever, just like staring. There was like flags, and it was gardens all over the world. There's like a world gardens,
Okay.
but they had the type of foliage that you would see in Scotland in this area,
Hmm.
and they had like Scotland flag and all of that. And I was just like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So I had my own little experience of just being able to celebrate by myself,
Wow.
with my call. And so I got my call. It was called to go in October 10th was my report date. I left for my mission on my birthday, October 9th. And so I left on October 9th, on my 19th birthday, and with the overnight and hours and stuff like that, I ended up
Right.
getting there on the 10th. Um, so that's when I started in MTC in England. There's about 30 people in the MTC, and had a great time there. But was anxious to get to Scotland, and
Yeah.
I'll talk about that more. Sorry, I kind of just went off.
No, that was awesome. What an incredible conversion story, and I can feel that fire and the passion that you had early on as you'd just joined the church, and just incredible. Like you said, you were kind of drinking from the fire hose, but at the
Yeah,
same time, it was like I need more and more and more, and you started inserting yourself. That was really really impressive, Andrew. That's awesome.
yeah,
So you entered October of '07. Did you come home October 2009?
yeah. Technically, it was that weird 3 week
Okay.
off offset. So I got home in September.
Okay.
I
Nice.
think like September 23rd or something. But yeah.
Okay. So tell
Um,
us tell us what you've been up to since September of 2009.
oh man, it that writing all this down and like trying to. It's crazy. It makes me feel old. Which
We're
I
getting
am.
there. We're getting there.
Yeah, yeah, I'm getting there. So, of course, get home from mission, start dating around, and lots of dating in the singles ward. And I was doing that for a little while, and I was trying to figure out where I wanted to go to school. So I decided I want to go to BYU Idaho. And when I was going up there, um, I had gotten accepted and gotten my housing and everything like that with a couple of friends from Southern California I was going to go with and house with. And about 4 weeks before I was about to go to BYU, Idaho, my mom, her husband, we found out her husband was cheating on her and left her. And so my
Yeah.
mom was left in this mess by herself. And I'm her only really child. My brother is in and out of jail a lot. And so I was the only one there at that time.
Hmm.
And so I had to make a decision. Like my mom was depressed and just not in a good state. And I just didn't feel right leaving her there with a mortgage and all the other stuff. And so I stayed back and worked and tried to help support as much as I can at home. And I was super bummed to not go to BYU Idaho. I was ready to go, but I felt like it was the right thing to do. And soon after, all of the reasons why came to pass and was clear to me why I wasn't supposed to go. My mom, through that hardship, started taking the lessons, and my mom was baptized in May. After I got home, I was able to baptize her
Oh my
uh,
gosh.
the
Wow.
following, yeah, the following year. And so I baptized my mom. I met my wife. My wife and I had been friends for 8 months since I got home, but she served a mission in Chile, and we were both returned missionaries around the same time. Both knew a lot of the same people. And so we ended up starting to date after I stayed home from BYU, Idaho. And then so I got married in January after that. And then, yeah, we started the Pathway program, which was a new program at the time.
Hmm.
And we were planning to stay in Southern California and finish my degree online. And we lived there for the first year. After 3 months, we got pregnant. And so we we went and I decided after a year to go up to BYU Idaho again to go to school full time. So we moved up to BYU Idaho. I finished my degree in recreation management in about 2 years.
Nice.
And yeah, and then we had another kid in between there, our second kid. And then I graduated in 2015 and I started working at Marriott in Indianapolis as a manager there and had some really neat experiences there. I job was okay, but it was like a rebirth of missionary work. Was uh, I was a ward mission leader there, and it was when a new temple was built in our ward boundaries, and so it was just like so much missionary work going on. I was over like eight or six sets of missionaries,
Holy
and
cow.
it was just constant baptisms and teaching and going to lessons, and it was just like spiritually like a second mission for me. It was so cool to have the spirit like that,
Wow.
and um, and get to know these young missionaries, and I still have association with a lot of those missionaries. And so anyway, after being there for a year, hotel business is good, but it's hard for families. It's a
Yeah.
lot of hours. And so I had an opportunity to work for BYU Idaho, and I took that opportunity and started working there in 2016, and just left there in um, December. So just this past
Oh,
year, I graduated with my master's. I just walked with my master's like a week ago
that's
from
awesome.
from
Congrats.
thank you from Boise State in organizational performance. And so I've been in basically consulting and contracting for different companies, helping improve their organizations. Um, and my mind is very methodical, and I think in that way. So
Yeah.
it's a perfect degree for me. Yeah. Anyway, I have two more kids since I moved to Idaho. I did want to say one thing about coming back before uh, that I think a lot of our podcasters would appreciate. Um, I have certain things that have happened in my life. And when I moved to Idaho, right, I was super on a spiritual high coming from being ward mission leader. Funny enough, I got into Rexburg, and within a week, I was called to be the ward mission leader again in Rexburg without them even knowing I was just a ward mission leader. And so I continued to do that for another 2 years. But I I came here, and there's this mountain. If you've been to Rexburg, there's a big R mountain, we call R mountain up here. And I got here, and the first thing I did was climb up to that mountain early in the morning and set goals. And this was a new stage of my life. And I set spiritual goals, and I set educational goals. One of them was to get a master's by 2023. I missed it by one semester, but I set these goals, and that came from my experience on Pratt's Hill of going up there and just being close to the Lord and feeling uh, dedicated. And goal setting was a huge part of my mission, reaching goals and setting goals. And so
Hmm.
I have always been appreciative because all of those goals have driven me to be who I am today and have helped me to achieve it. And so that experience going up our mountain, my own Pratt's Hill, and redoing that again was super cool. And so that's where we are today.
That's cool. So you have 4 children, correct?
4 children, 3 boys and a girl.
And ages?
Oh goodness. I should have been prepared for this. 12,
Come on,
9,
Andrew. You're supposed to know all
12,
that.
9, 7, 5. I got them all, I think. 12, 9, 7, 5.
It's fantastic. Very cool.
Yeah, my oldest is a deacon right now, and last year I was called to serve in the bishopric, and I'm a counselor in the bishopric that is over deacons. So I'm so excited I get to be with my son
Yeah.
at all the activities, and I was never in Young Men's, so I'm like,
Oh yeah.
what is this world? I'm still learning it myself. But
oh man, that's amazing. That sounds so fun. That's great.
Mhm.
Very cool. Well, good. Well, take us back. You can start again at the MTC and your experience there, and just go through areas, companions, and everything that you loved about Scotland.
Oh man, okay, this will take up the rest of the 2 hours. No, I'm kidding. No, I there's so much going into England. I mean, honestly, I didn't even know where Scotland or England was on a map. Like, I couldn't even tell you where it was when I got called.
Yeah.
I had to look it up. And so when I got there, um, it was just everything was happening so fast. I was just pondering on this like this past couple of weeks of like how that experience was, and it's all so foggy now. But I just remember being like picked up in this van, and then all of a sudden we're just going on the wrong side of the road really fast, and
That's right.
and then we arrive, and then I'm like, what is this food, and who are these people, and we're gonna go running at 6 a.m. What is this? Why are we doing this? Um,
Oh my gosh.
and but I was loved. I had a companion. My companion MC was Chris Lee, and if anyone who knows Chris knows that he is intense. He is just 100% everything he does, and so he was like, let's go running, let's go do this," and I'm like, oh man, I just want to. I've barely even adjusted right now. Uh, but he was awesome. I loved him. And we were there for 2 weeks, and shipped off to Scotland to uh, and took the train up there. And I was listening to somebody else. I think it was um, oh, who was it I was listening to? I can't remember now, but I was listening to a podcast the other day, and I was like, yeah, the smell of alcohol is like the first thing that came to my mind. What is that stench? What is that? Like when you land, you're just like, what in the world is this?
Yeah, it's pretty terrible. You're like, what? It smells like burning bread, but
Yeah,
not.
exactly. But not, yeah. But MTC, I think, there's a few funny moments at the MTC where I feel like I had my convert moments where I'm like, I am new to this culture, to this whole thing, but I was so grateful for people who were leading me along the way. I think President, or Brother Higginbotham, I think was his name. He like took me aside. I think my first one, because I was coming without my jacket.
Mhm.
And he's like, "Hey, you should really wear your jacket when you come to these devotionals." And I was like, "Oh, I didn't even wasn't even aware that other people were wearing jackets."
Yeah.
And it's the small things, and it's just like, "Oh, cool." I just needed to know that. And it was just I felt like a fish out of water. I think like we all do, but there was just those little things I had to pick up on as missionary life that just were like, oh, that's something I'm going to pick up on.
Yeah.
And I got to the mission home, and it was very interesting. Everybody knew who I was before I got there.
Okay.
I was the convert missionary, and so it was like
Like they labeled
everybody.
you? Come on.
Oh, I was the convert missionary. Like everybody wanted to know my missions, my story, which is so cool.
Mhm.
But I was like, why does everyone know like that I'm a convert? And it was really cool that I felt more welcome. I think that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
Um, but I also got a little bit of a taste of what the mission was going to be like right off the bat. I had a one of the assistants. I can't even remember what their name was, but he said to me something like, um, he's like, "Oh, tell me about your story." And I told him, and he's like, "Okay, so when you got baptized, how long did it take you for like to make that decision to get baptized?" And I said, "Well, like I said, it was this day, and I think it was a month and a half before from the date I decided to the day I got baptized."
Mhm.
And he said the first thing he said was, "I could have had you baptized quicker than that." And I think, oh, that's a good taste of what the Scotland Edinburgh mission is going to be like for the next year or so.
Oh boy.
And I think my cheeky response back was, "And I probably wouldn't be here on a mission if you had." And it was just I came from a rough background, so I had a lot of learning to do on that side
Hmm.
of just like social cues and just like not saying whatever's on my mind.
Oh,
And
sure. Yeah.
and so that was, but it was also I wanted to be good and I wanted to be a good missionary, and so I was in this mix of like, how do I stay in this like good zone of refined, better version of me, um, without letting the ghetto me come out. And so uh, it was, but I loved it. I got my companion Brian Black from Northern Ireland was my first companion. We
Oh
went to
yeah.
Dumfries. They called it Outer Darkness, is where they told me I was going, which was Dumfries. And everyone could say, and I think they called it that for a lot of reasons. One, there was no baptisms there for like the whole year before. And so it was a dry area, and it was away from everybody. We didn't even go to like district meetings because district was in Livingston, and
Oh,
so it was like we called in to those. Um, and so I was with Brian, Elder Black for 6 weeks, I think, and then I was with Elder Kyler Webb, and then we were there for 3 more months from there.
I have a
And
question for you, Andrew.
yeah,
Are you still in contact with Brian Black?
I'm not. No, I haven't been in
Man,
contact with him.
because I ended my mission January of 2007, so I knew
Oh
Brian
yeah, yeah.
towards the beginning of his mission, and I cannot track him down for the life of me. So
Oh really?
if you get an opportunity where somebody plugs you in to get in touch with him,
I would love to.
I'd love to talk to
I
him.
bet I can
So
because
good.
he's got family in Scotland that I'm still connected to because his aunt lives
There you go.
um, in the north part, and I served in Aberdeen.
Okay,
Uh,
I didn't realize that.
yeah, his mom and his aunt are twins, like identical twin sisters,
Oh, okay, I didn't
and
realize that.
he actually served in the area where his aunt was, and
Mhm.
it's like seeing your mom every day. It was weird.
That would be strange. Goodness.
Yeah, and his cousins were in that ward, so
Hmm.
I'd have to ask. But yeah, and I ended up serving with. I'll tell you later, but 3 Irish missionaries. So
Oh wow.
well, he's from Northern Ireland, so I want to be very distinct. 2 Irish missionaries and 1 Northern Irish missionary.
Yeah, he might be offended. That's for sure.
Yeah. So no,
That's
I
cool.
had a great time, honestly, and I hope other Scottish people don't hear this, but Dumfries was one of my favorite areas of my mission. The people, the mission, the members there were so kind and so warm. They really made you feel like family. I remember like Christmas, they came. 3 of the older sisters, came and dressed up as Santa and brought us like a bunch of gifts to our flat, and it had like toilet paper and candy and all this like fun stuff, and there was just so much love and goodness in that ward. And then I was able to have a few baptisms there, experiences with those that were just some of the best experiences I had. Um,
That's cool.
so I loved Dumfries, and then I was there for I think 4.5 months, and then was called to be a district leader in Motherwell,
Okay.
um,
Up the road.
up the road. Yeah, and and the funny thing is I didn't even really understand what a district leader was. Like those are just terms for a
Yeah.
convert. I'm just like I don't really understand all this. And so they're like, "You're gonna be a district leader." I'm like, "Okay, cool. I don't know what that means." And especially because I wasn't even going to district meetings because they were in Livingston, and so I was
Yeah,
like,
that's
I
true. I
didn't have
forgot
the
about
same
that.
relationship, and so they're like, "You've got to do a district meeting. You've got to lead a district meeting," and I'm like, "What's a district meeting? Like, what is that?"
Wow.
And so it was like starting from scratch. But that district was Hamilton, Motherwell, and East Kilbride, and I loved it. It was awesome. It was really fun. I had a good companion. Actually, I had two companions. I had Elder Ozard. I couldn't remember the other one. It's driving me nuts. Um, but anyway, I
It'll
was in
come
a
to you. It'll come to you.
yeah, it was a trio and awesome trio. So much fun with those two. Um, if any of you know Elder Luke Ozard, you'll know how interesting and how many quotes I have from Elder Ozard. He's a English convert who just had a really rough background, but he would say the funniest things all the time. And so I was with them for 6 weeks, and then Elder Stringfellow came and served as my companion for his last 6 weeks. I killed him off
Oh
in
yeah.
Motherwell, and it was really a blessing. He was the assistant before he became my companion, and so he was able to come down and give me a lot of training and a lot of leadership advice and personal advice that was really good. And just like I feel like President Frederick was really inspired to send him over, and it was really a caring move for him to do that to help me in my own leadership capacity and helping me become better, more confident, and more able in that way.
Wow.
So I killed off Elder Stringfellow, and then I had
He's one we need to get on here. So if you have the
he's not on
ability,
yet. Oh
no.
man, what is
I,
his deal?
I ran around with Brad for a second, like again, very, very small amount of time, but
Oh yeah.
I'd love to have him on the podcast.
Oh, I'd love to hear from him again. So then after that, I was with Elder Colin Brophy,
Okay.
uh, and Colin and I came out at the same time. So it was the first time I had someone in the MCC as my companion, and we had a good time. We were together for 3 months. Finished off in Motherwell. We were both called about our year mark to go train, um, to be trainers at our year mark. And so we both knew we were going to Edinburgh to get a companion and a trainer. The funny thing was though, was that was the turn. What is it called? What's it called when you start a new area?
Oh,
Uh,
you were whitewashing. Oh,
yeah.
you opened an area?
Well, I did that, but what's in a new 6 weeks? Whatever that is, the
Oh, a new
transfer.
transfer? Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So the new transfer, that his brother was coming into the mission. So his younger brother, Porek Brophy,
Uh-huh.
was coming in. So we both were like going in, and you know how they do in the mission home, they're going to separate you, and then they're going to put you on one side, and then you get companions. Well, I think President Frederick had a good laugh about keeping me and Colin at the last two.
Oh
So we're
no.
the last two to be put, and his brother and another guy was the last two on the other side. And I'm like, dude, am I going to get your brother? Like, or are you going to get your brother? So
Yeah.
I ended up getting his brother, and
Wow. Back to
uh,
back.
back to back. So
That's
3 months, 3 months.
amazing.
And I trained his brother, and we whitewashed a new area in Aberdeen,
Okay.
and
Nice.
went up to Aberdeen. So it was really funny though, the dynamic. I loved his brother. Like we jived a lot better together, and so we just had the same kind of like sarcastic humor, and it was just really funny because I can't remember who our district leader was, but um, they kind of pulled us aside one time, and they're like, "Are you guys getting along? You guys don't seem to be getting along." And like we're looking at each other like, "Why would you say that?" This is like my favorite companion, but it's because we were just so frank and open with each other. I was just like, "I can't believe you didn't stop that person. What's wrong with you?" Like, and we would just like joke around about it, like, "Come on, you could do better than that."
Yeah.
And he would jab back at me, and we would just keep going and laugh and keep going, you know. And
Oh,
but
man,
it was
that's
a
awesome.
humor that only we understood, I guess. And so,
Wow.
uh,
So
so
you
him
were
and I,
in Aberdeen.
yeah,
Were you
Aberdeen, yeah,
in the Aberdeen ward
I think
or
so.
Bridget Dawn?
It wasn't Bridgeton. Yeah,
Okay.
it was Aberdeen.
So the
So I
state
know.
center, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Okay.
and we had everything south of the main street in Aberdeen. So Port
Okay.
Lethen, it went all the way out there, like out to the castle where the queen lived and all that, like Kilgore, or something like that.
Yeah.
It was like it was beautiful up there. It was some beautiful areas, but it was way like my thing on my mission up until my last area was having the largest square footage of any areas. Like Dumfries was massive. Like in square footage wise, we had one member that was like an hour away from another member, and it was just like trying to visit these little towns and cities.
Hmm.
It was just insane all the traveling that we did, and we didn't have enough mileage, so we ended up having to be very strategic of how we went to places. But because of that, I always had a car, which was nice.
So so I'm just trying to think. So how far south was your area? Did you guys get down to like Donator Castle in that area?
We got yeah.
Stonehaven? Okay.
Yeah, we went Stonehaven, Donator. Yeah, it was everywhere down there. I can't remember how far it went, but it was pretty far. I don't even think we went to the bottom of where we were.
Yeah.
There's plenty to do, and we had Leith and
Hmm.
a lot of those areas concentrated in Aberdeen. So
Did
that
you have
was one of
did you have the red light district as well?
oh yeah, we had everything. We had a good time out there. It was really fun.
I spent 6 months of my mission in the Aberdeen ward as the zone leader
Oh
towards the end of
really?
my mission. So yeah, we got up to too many crazy moments in Aberdeen. I love that area. It's great.
There's two things about Aberdeen that I had to tell people. One is like Aberdeen is one of the most beautiful cities that I served in Scotland in terms of like cleanliness and like the buildings and how it looked and like
Hmm.
in terms of Main Street, right? I was there in Christmas time. They had the
Oh
lights across, and it was
yeah.
like a dream up here. And like the quarry stone and how everything is built is just like so many cities I were in Scotland. It's like this dark and dirty colors that like are moldy and gross, and you get this like beautiful just streets with stone, and it's just
Yeah.
amazing. So I loved it up there. It really felt like Scotland,
Oh
like
yeah.
up there, and I felt like what I kind of imagined Scotland to be in a lot of ways.
Hmm.
Um, and so I think I was only there for 3 months, which was kind of a bummer, but
Three
then
months while training.
while training, yeah. So I served
Okay.
through the whole months while training up there.
Who was the ward mission leader at that time? Do you remember?
I couldn't remember.
Was it one of the Goldie boys?
It might have been. No, it was an older person.
Oh really? Okay.
I think it was. Yeah, we had Sister Ott up there with us.
Yeah.
Elder Mulford. No, English guy. I can't remember his name. But they're great zone, great area. I loved it there. That was a year mark, and I started to see a bit of a shift in leadership in
Hmm.
Scotland around that time. That's really when I started to see a shift of really caring, compassionate, and kind leaders. Um, and I felt like that was a transition for me, and it was like kind of a weird transition. I didn't know what to do with it.
Hmm.
It was Elder Chad Nielsen
Yeah.
was the zone leader, I think, and he was just like the most Christ-like and kind zone leader I've ever had, and he was just so encouraging and so motivating for me, and so it was just like such a different feel.
Yeah.
I know I've heard on the podcast people refer to the other part of the mission, and we can go into that all day. We don't need to though, but we'll focus on the good. We'll focus on the future going path. And the last year of my mission was very full of great leaders that were really inspiring to me. Not that they weren't before, just different. Um, but I really felt the Lord's guidance and spirit and kindness through those leaders, and I think that was something I hadn't felt as strong before.
Interesting.
So, but
Yeah.
I loved it, and then I didn't get a change out from Frederick until my last 3 months.
I
So
was gonna say it had to have been pretty close to the end.
yeah, it was Griffiths. Griffiths came in my last 3 months. So, but
Okay.
then anyway, after Aberdeen, down to Dunfermline. So,
Oh man, I love that place too.
did you serve Dunfermline?
I had 6 months in Dunfermline too.
I
Yeah.
had 7.5. I beat you by 6.
Ah,
6 weeks.
you're so lucky.
Well, lucky, yeah. So
Come on, tell me, Andrew.
no, I loved Dunfermline. Uh, I had my most personal growth in that area, I think, on my mission. Yeah, every mission, I think, when I talk to people, has their different things, right? Like
Yeah.
your growth of you get convert baptisms and you get to feel that experience. And I feel like for me, the second half of my mission was very much a like this is time for you to to develop into the person I want you to be. And
Oh,
and I felt like that was given to me through companions that were very difficult. And so
okay.
I had my first companion. I did not get along in Dunfermline. We made it 6 weeks, and it just did not go well. And then my next one
You don't even
was
want to name your companion you didn't want to get along with. Come on, throw him under the bus. It's
no,
been
no.
long enough,
He
Andrew.
would agree. He doesn't. I don't think he would like me either. But I don't actually remember his name.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Well,
so
I'll put that
that'll be
as I'll put it as omitted for
omitted.
for record's sake.
It'll come to me. It'll come to me. Maybe it's been blotted out. Um, but we worked together 6 weeks, and then I got Elder Ashton Rich. Have we done Ashton Rich yet?
I don't think we have.
Oh my gosh, you've got to get Ashton Rich on there.
Okay.
Okay, so Ashton, so funny, right? Complete opposite to my last companion, to a to a, to a fault almost. So I had one that was like super kind of hard to work with, and then this guy, Elder Rich, is like the kindest, most gentle, and meek person I've ever met in my life. Like,
Yeah.
and I am this like kind of a go getter, and I'm like impatient, and I've got all those other things that I need to work on in my life. And here comes this like person here who just reflects back all the terrible things about myself because he won't react to it because he's just such a good person. And this like kid from American Fork, Utah, that has never, you know, and he would he was so funny. He would refer to other members like he would say like, "Oh, AF." He's like, "I'm from AF." I'm like, "Elder, they don't know what AF is. You cannot say AF." And so I would like all these little things I would have to teach him. And he's like, PG, and I'm like, "Okay, stop saying acronyms from Utah." Uh, and
For
he
those of
had,
us who grew up in Utah, it makes sense. But
oh
like,
yeah, yeah.
you're
I'm like, "You're in
talking to
Scotland,
oh,
dude."
jeez. Okay.
So he he was so funny, and he had, I think he struggled with a lot of things. He had like a speech impediment,
Oh,
um, and there were just some learning things, and really confidence. He wasn't able to talk to people, and so it started to. And I'm like this fixer person. I like to like, and I was like pretty mean. I would just like make him repeat scriptures over and over again, and like, okay, pronounce that right, and like get him to try and do it. And looking back, I now am like, wow, that was really. I've talked to him since, and we're friends now. But every 6 weeks, I would be like, please, I can't do this anymore. And please, I can't do this anymore. I'm like, it's not even him. It's like the reflection back to me.
hmm.
And it was like, it was so hard for me at that time. And every 6 weeks, you're with Elder Rich again, Elder Rich again, Elder Rich again. I served with him for 6 months out of the 7.5
Really?
that I was
Holy
there.
cow!
So yeah, I served the first 6 weeks with that one companion, and the rest of the 7.5 months was with Elder Rich.
That's amazing.
And and um and so I thought every time I'm like, I haven't learned what I needed to learn yet. And I tell my wife, and I've told Elder Rich this since then, of like I apologized and for the way I treated him and the way I, was impatient and all of those things. But I said, because of you though, I'm a better husband and a better father because I learned to get all that out. And like I learned to be patient and loving and kind, and by force of having to just do that by experience.
Yeah.
Um, we had a rough time there in the area. Dunfermline was another one of my favorites. The people there were amazing. We had some great leadership in the area, um, and just really strong members. We had, um,
How many sets of missionaries were in Dunfermline at that point?
Just one.
Oh,
Yeah. So
really?
yeah, it was us, and then we were in Kirkcaldy district.
Yeah.
So it was Kirkcaldy, us, and there's one other one. I think there was two in Kirkcaldy and one in Dunfermline.
Okay.
So we had everything Dunfermline, like
Wow.
down to the coast and down to the bridge, down to
Yeah.
Fourth Bridge, all the way around. So yeah, we had. When did you serve there? You said you had 6 months, right?
Yeah, I was there early on in my mission. So like it was almost like springtime about this time, like late
Oh,
April, May, and then I left in like October. So I basically had a summer in
oh
Dunfermline,
yeah,
which was awesome. So,
yeah. That
but
was a good area. Good leadership. Tony Rand, and
oh yeah, Tony and Paul Rand are awesome people.
yeah,
Just unbelievable. Was Paul
Paul.
Lynch still the bishop at that point?
Yeah, he was. I
Okay,
love Paul.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a good. I had a lot of good people there. Um, and I actually met up with who was it recently? Uh, Paul's niece. Um, anyway, I can't remember. I'll come back to it. But
Okay, yeah.
she was a member there. She came out to Idaho recently for something, and we were able
Oh,
to visit with her, which was pretty cool.
interesting. That's cool. Yeah. Some of my favorite people there were like Julie Hudson.
Oh, Julie,
Uh,
yeah.
so
Then,
Tim and Dom was probably on his mission at that point in time,
he
right?
wasn't yet. I got to spend time while he was prepping for his mission.
Okay, that's so
Yeah,
good. He's such a good kid.
yeah, I love Dom.
Um, and their daughter, the daughter Philippa, their sister, she's fun too.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Did you ever go to the Happy Days Club with Brian?
Oh, Brian. Why is Brian is Brian Brian blind?
He's not blind. He's a little bit special needs.
Oh, bigger guy.
No, he's pretty skinny guy. I'm trying to think how I could describe him
Where
without.
he live?
I think he lived in Cowdenbeath.
Oh, okay. I
Um,
I know that's his name. I just is not coming to me to the face.
anyway, he always made our day because he was always so happy to see you. He never called you by your name correctly. Like he had nicknames for everybody. I think he called me Elder Howie forever because Hewlett was a little bit too hard for him, so I was Elder Howie. And
Naturally, yeah.
but the way in which he reacted to circumstances, and if he didn't get his way, he'd go outside and smoke a fag because it was like you made me do this because I'm now angry at you. And so he's just a special character in the Dunfermline Ward and fantastic. I don't know if he's still around. I hope he is, but anyway, there was like a hall in Cowdenbeath that we'd go to once a week, and we'd basically serve tea and biscuits and call bingo and sing karaoke for some older people. Like it
I never
was.
did that. That sounds fun.
Oh man, that's terrible that you guys didn't have that anymore because it was such a blast. Like the
Oh
first
man.
time I walked in, I was like, this is so weird. What are we doing here? Because I mean, in Scotland at that point in time, the whole entire hall is full of cigarette smoke. And I'm
Oh
like,
yeah.
we're gonna come out just smelling like an ashtray. But eventually we made friends there, and because I was there for a while, I got to make some good friends, which was fun.
That's crazy.
But
Well, that's the only, well, not the only area. I served in Glasgow, so I mean, not Glasgow, but in that zone.
mhm.
So I saw plenty of crazy stuff there. But that was one of the areas where I still remember walking from our flat down to the church building. Was it the same flat, like the above the funeral home?
That was the other missionary's flat. So I didn't
Oh,
live there, but let's just say that I kind of lived there because
yeah,
we
yeah.
spent so much time there.
I love that. That was an amazing flat.
Oh yeah.
So
That
I,
hill that hill though, getting up to High Street was an absolute butt kicker. Every
oh,
time you walked up there, it was like, why did I climbed a mountain to get to the High Street?
oh
Was it
no,
worth it?
it's so true. They're like, is McDonald's really worth it at the top of the hill? I don't think so.
That's right. That's right. Oh man.
Um, so yeah, and we were walking one day, and I remember there's a roundabout right by the Aldi's by the church building, and we were
Yeah.
walking down, and I saw this kid. I mean, he had to be like 12, and he had like a case of beer, and he was walking. It was on a Sunday, and he was walking with his case of beer, walk across the crosswalk in front of a policeman. The policeman nods at him and just keeps driving. I'm like, what the heck is wrong with this
Yeah,
place?
sounds about right. That's Scotland to a T right there for
I
sure.
was like, oh man, that was crazy. But
What
yeah,
time? What time of year were you there?
December. So I would have gotten there in November, right before Christmas, and I was there for 7.5 months, so probably till June, July.
Did you happen to know the Hargreaves up in Kelty?
I did. They were a little bit farther out, but I did know. I know the name. I remember going up further for a few members that we visited,
Okay.
but I'm trying to
I'm
remember.
curious if you were there long enough, and if you were visiting their home, they would have invited you to participate in the coal race. Did you ever hear about that?
Mm-mm.
Oh man, so many things changed, Andrew. I'm
I
sorry.
know. Over like a year. That's
Yeah,
crazy.
that's kind of crazy. But again, it comes with the
So
fact that you had two less missionaries in the ward.
we talked about special characters and Dunfermline. Can I just bring up Judith Dunkley? Because that is,
Oh yes.
she just reached out to me after the mission announcement.
Oh,
Uh,
that's awesome.
but she said something to me. She said something so funny to me. I was like, he's still not baptized? You've got to know who she's talking about. Judith Dunkley. Okay, she just sent me a message.
I want to know who she's talking about.
Is it Andrew Jackson? Is that his name? Big guy. Now this guy, he was like down in starts with an R.
Rosai?
Rosyth. Yeah, he was down in
Yeah.
Rosyth. And he's like a forever investigator. Like he is just one that is
Hmm.
always taught by the missionaries, but never really nothing happens.
See, when I
So
was there, we had kind of the north half. So we had like we would go to High Street, but most of it was like the north half of town, and then everything south was the other elders area where you lived. So I may not have interacted with him, but you said his name's Andrew Jackson?
I think his name is Andy.
Andy.
Can't remember what his last name. I
Huh.
might be mixing up with a different person. There were the Jacksons in Rosyth. That's what I'm thinking of probably,
Okay.
but not this family. Anyway, Andy, he was a big guy. I think he was blind or something like that.
Okay.
But anyway, he was an investigator forever. And she messaged me like last week or like when the temple got announced.
Yeah.
And she's like, Andy's been going on about us needing a temple here. And now we have one announced. He also said it gives him more of a reason to join. I was like, Andy, there's not more of a reason to join. Just
He's
join the
just
church.
he's just checking boxes throughout the years. I'm
Almost
getting
there.
closer. Getting closer.
Almost there.
Oh
Goodness.
man, that's crazy.
Good old Judith, though. You know, Judith's faithful. She's still going. And
That's great.
yeah, so good people there. Lynn Anderson was the one that came out.
Okay. Yeah.
So Lynn and her husband, they're not active anymore, but their family's very active. I think his dad was a bishop in not Kirkcaldy, above Kirkcaldy. What's above Kirkcaldy?
The Dundee.
Dundee. Yeah, in Dundee.
Yeah.
Dad
Okay.
was and Bishop Anderson up there.
Okay.
Anyway, and she is Paul's niece.
Oh, okay. Interesting.
Served a mission in Salt Lake City, Temple Square.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
but anyway,
Fantastic.
it was really interesting why she was here. She was here for she was sponsored here by BBC to kind of document her a time in her life that was very influential.
Hmm.
And she can go anywhere in the world, and they paid for her to go to Salt Lake for a month because she chose her mission, even though she's not active anymore. That was a very influential time for her,
Yeah.
and they paid for her for like a month and a half, everything, expenses, food, driving, cars, everything. And she went from Vegas to Idaho, and she stayed with us, and I got to take her up on campus and show her some things. But it was really cool to reunite with her again.
That's really cool. That's fantastic.
So anyway,
That's awesome.
Dunfermline, lots of good times in Dunfermline. And after that, Elder Rich and I separated, thinking I'd probably never talk to him again. And he's probably one of the main people I have talked to since I've been home.
Nice.
After I cooled my jets a little bit and realized how much of an influence he was on me. And of course, he's as kind as ever. He is still like doesn't. I don't even think he remembers half the things that happened. I think I was harder on myself than he was on than he actually interpreted it because I was talking to him about it. And he's like, I don't remember that, and I was like, wow, you are just that kind
Yeah.
person. And
It's
he's awesome. He's married now, has a kid in Utah and in AF. I think he's still in AF. So
awesome.
living the dream out there.
Ashton, come on the podcast. I know you're listening. Come on and
I
share your story with us.
I saw him out there last year. We Elder Griffith or President Griffiths had a thing at his house for returned missionaries
Cool.
that were in the mission, and so he was there, and I got to see a bunch of people.
That's
So that
awesome.
was really neat. Anyway, so I went over there and finished off in Edinburgh, my last area. So I was in Morningside area. I think my area was Morningside.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that was well, actually no, two areas. So I lived in two flats. My first flat was in the north part of Edinburgh. Uh, Let me see here.
Like along the Firth?
No, Leith.
Okay, yeah. Leith.
So I had Leith, and we were in like right north of the castle. So,
Okay.
and our flat was the coolest like Scottish experience of being in Edinburgh, like right in the city, because I'd only been there for like a couple times for meetings and stuff.
Right.
And when I first got there in the mission, so it was like I've been so far away from it. I guess I should go back to the story. This is an interesting thing. Elder Brophy, Colin Brophy, and I, we had to go back to Motherwell multiple times after we left Motherwell because we were part of our investigator was like killed. No, she was almost murdered in front of us. And so we had to.
How did you omit that, Andrew? Come on, you got to share this.
Yeah,
Goodness.
yeah. Uh,
In
this is
front of you?
Yeah. So
Oh my
we were
gosh.
teaching. We were teaching this young lady in an area that the bishop told us not to go into. Uh, but we were desperate for people, and she wanted to learn, and we were like, "You guys have to have somebody with you in this area." And I was like, "Okay." And there was this one day, it was like we didn't. Anyway, so we went to this appointment, and she had been investigating and been doing okay, but she was struggling with all the word wisdom issues, like everything.
Yeah.
And we were teaching her at a less active member's house, and that one of her neighbors who referred her to us, and we were we were teaching the lesson, and I was saying the closing prayer. And as I was saying the closing prayer, she lived in a six block flat, 6 unit flat, and so those doors you have to buzz into.
Right.
And I heard we were on the second floor, and I heard the doors below being like shoved open, like they're just being violently opened, and I could hear that. And I knew that she got into a fight with somebody in the neighborhood the night before for something. I don't know what happened, but it was something related to that. And I'm saying the closing prayer, and as soon as I say amen, the door of the apartment gets smashed into, and they open the door and fly into the house. There's three people, and one of them had a meat cleaver, um, and a couple other weapons, and two girls just jumped on top of our investigator and just threw her to the ground and started beating her. And we're trying to figure out what to do. We back up, we take a step, and then the less active investigator gets up, and she's just like crazy, like thug lady from Scotland. Like she grabs one of the girls off and throws them off like they're like a doll, like a rag doll, and grabs the meat cleaver out of her hand and goes, puts it in the kitchen. And then we're like, what do we do? So we, the less active member says, just get out now. So we ran out, and then we called I called 911. Didn't get any answer because
It's
999.
411. Oh, it's 999. That's right.
Yeah. So I'm like, what's wrong with this thing? And we're down the street, kind of like hearing, and it's just like loud. We can hear the apartment shouting and all this other stuff. And I'm like, what the heck? And um, so we then decided we call the ambulance, call 999, and we see the people leaving the flat building and running down the street. And we think that in our minds, we think that they have her with them. And so we're like, I'm gonna go back. We're gonna go back and check in on the less active member and just make sure everything's okay. And we go back there, and the less active member opens the door, and she's just covered in blood. And it wasn't her blood; it was the investigators. And we go into the living room. They didn't have carpet; it was just wood. And she was on the floor and just in a pool of blood. And she survived, but she got hit. I mean, they got the meat cleaver back and hit her in the head a couple times. And so
Oh my God.
we had to identify these people. And so the trial went on for several months. And so it was like, I would have to go by myself from Aberdeen down to Motherwell, and then Colin and I would meet up, and then we'd go to trial and then go back up. And so it was interesting. So
that is easily the most intense story I have heard about Murderwell.
Murderwell.
Oh my God.
It has a reason for the name.
Wow.
But we ended up baptizing her a couple weeks after. So weirdly enough, right? Lord works in weird ways. She gets to the hospital, and all the drugs are out of her system now. Like,
Sure.
she is like having to clean out, and she's recovering, and all of her addictions and everything like kind of had to be forced out while she was recovering. And so we were able to talk to her and still taught her and got her baptized, and it was awesome.
Wow. That's amazing.
And yeah, so I'll give you a little bit of the Scotland at the time as well. So you just said like this crazy story. How did you miss this, right? Here I'm thinking, yeah, this is a crazy story. I'm the district leader. I call my zone leader at the time, right? And this is no joke. This is no exaggeration. Tell them what just happened, right? I get no reaction. And the next question I get is, so what are your numbers for today, Elder?
What? You're reporting numbers to a robot.
I'm like straight traumatized right here. Like,
oh my God.
I'm trying to process all this stuff. I honestly went back to our flat that night, and there was like that part of that, like that PTSD, that because we lived in the north side of Motherwell, and it was a nicer area for Motherwell, and you know, our flat was the same way. It was a 3 apartments flat, and we had the door at the bottom you had to buzz into. And we were there that night, and I remember I looked at Elder Brophy because someone buzzed in, and we both just had like chills up our spine because of just what we experienced. And it's like, it's just crazy how terrified we were of that like happening again. And
I don't blame you at all. My gosh.
But I got my numbers in, so it's all good. So we did identify the people, and they were put in jail, which is awesome, and correctly identified them. But we had to go back for most of our mission for that, so that was kind of a bummer. My companion had to be left behind in Aberdeen to serve with like going a trio with the zone leader, so I could go down to this. And that was weird because I would just be by myself. I would just on a train, all the way to Motherwell just for a day and come back.
Jeez.
But yeah, got to see a lot of Scotland. So
yeah, I'm sure you did.
Anyway.
Crazy. So who did you serve with in Edinburgh when you said you started in Leith?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. I served in a trio again.
Okay.
With 2 English missionaries. Craig. Why do I know their first names while they're awesome? Craig, Elder Craig. That one. Don't know his last name. And Elder from Wales. Dang it. I will send it to you. I know who they are. Anyway, they're my last 3. which is weird because how do I remember my first missionaries more than my most recent ones? I don't understand that, but it's there. I don't remember my last two missionaries' names, but Craig
Yeah, even if you have to look it
Needham,
up.
Needham,
Needham. Okay.
and Wales. Let's see. Does anything come up with Wales? I don't know. Anyway, he was Welsh, and he
Okay.
was really nice, really fun companionship. Served for 6 weeks with them, and then I think it was my last 6 weeks. I served. We moved over to Morningside,
Hmm.
and I was just me with a newer missionary who came in from Southern California, um, and I served with him for the last 6 weeks.
Okay.
Yeah,
Cool.
good times. Elder President Griffiths for the last 3 months of our mission was in Edinburgh, so I got to get to know them a little bit better. And that was really interesting because I mean, my only time in my mission around the mission president was when I was in that area, which was
Hmm.
not under President Frederick. So I only really talked to President Frederick at meetings and our one-on-ones that we had.
Right.
So, but I was never around the mission home up until my last 3 months. So I got to know. I feel like I got to know President Griffiths better than I did President Frederick, just because of the vicinity I was in and being close to the mission home and serving in the Edinburgh ward for that building next to the mission home.
Hmm.
So
Interesting.
yeah. So anyway, I got to. It was all kind of like mysterious to me, like what President Frederick. I mean, I got to know him a little bit, but it was always like the mission home down there, and I was always so far away that I felt so disconnected.
Yeah.
But I felt like one thing that one of my companions said, or one of my district leaders in Dunfermline, actually, when he was in Kirkcaldy, he said, and I felt like this was very true of me, and it's probably still true to this day. But he told me something that President Frederick told him, being my leader, and he said, "If you leave Elder Merrick alone, he'll get work done. If you get on him too much, he's going to fight you back. So just leave him alone, and he'll get missionary work. He'll get people baptized." And I'm like, that's
Jeez.
probably pretty true. I'm a little resistant to pressure and being like put on the spot in some ways. I can't tell you how many times I probably hung up on a zone leader for being disrespectful and unkind or just ridiculous. And I was like, I don't need to talk to you. I'm just gonna hang up on you. So, and I would just say you could, and they'd call back and yell, and I'd say you call back when you could talk to me normally, but you're not gonna yell at me. Uh, I'm a human being, and it was just one of those things. It was like very weird for me, and it was just very uh, hard for me as a convert. I think in a lot of ways to see
Yeah.
missionaries in a different light, because missionaries were my like
Hmm.
I just treated them like gold, and I think that was hard for me to see what we all see, just missionaries being human, um, having faults and having uh, not as Christ-like as you would imagine, I guess, in some ways. And so it was hard to come see that as a convert, um, but it was also reality, and I think that it was just reality for me. I realized that I talked to my wife, I talked to other missionaries, and I don't really talk about my mission in bad light, but I think that hearing some people's stories, I'm like, this is very unique. Scott, my mission experience and the leadership and the way that it happened was very unique to Scotland at that time in that little phase that it was going through. And I kind of just assumed it was worldwide. Like that's just how it was. And I was just like kind of naive, and I just expected that most
Yeah.
people experience what I did. And it wasn't until I got home and I was like, oh, that's not normal. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
but
just listen to some of our podcasts of missionaries that experienced the combination of Scotland and Ireland and
oh yeah,
the polar opposites of what the mission cultures were. I mean, it was very, very different. one to the other. And so I know exactly what you're talking about. And that's honestly one of my favorite parts about these conversations is people look at my time in the mission, and I remember thinking to myself, I wonder how truly apostate the missionaries were, a generation before my time. And you'd hear stories from all the missionaries who are older early on in your mission. You're like, there's no way that those things are happening. And then I've heard from these conversations how apostate my generation of the mission was because we weren't up to the standard that had been set by the leadership after I had gone home, which again, it's all circumstantial to each individual who's been in that era of time in Scotland. But nonetheless, it's just so fascinating to hear because like you said, your entire mindset is my mission was this, and it was kind of this box, but that was your own experience because of the fact that you were there in that certain window of time.
Yeah. It is amazing too, like the power of influence and trying to be like I think that there is you're young, right? You want to impress people. You want to impress your leaders and get them to think the best of you. Um and you get to a point where like if you say I don't care, then it's like you're disobedient or apostate. And I think that was hard for me. It's like it's not that I don't care. I don't care about you. I care about these people. And I care about sharing what I was given. And that for me was the only reason I was there was was to share what I had experienced just a year earlier. And I think that for me, I didn't want to lose that.
Yeah.
I didn't want to get lost in the numbers of just treating people as numbers. And I understand completely that numbers are people. And I understand that it's influence, but conversion is what I was hoping for, not numbers, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, I couldn't treat people like numbers. It hurt me to do that because meaning like we're going to get people baptized before they're ready to be baptized.
Right.
That's where I was like, why are we jumping to do that? They're still, I mean, I had the one person who I knew was smoking the day before, and my zone leader overrode me and said, we're still baptizing this person after interviewing him. And I just told the zone leader that they were smoking the day before. And it's like, and then they joined the church and left the next week. And you're like, that's not what I came here for.
Yeah.
And that's where it kind of, I started to become a little bit more resistant in some ways to like trusting everything when those kind of experiences happen.
Hmm.
But you still want to be obedient. You still want to be a good missionary. And you still, those are human nature things.
Right. Exactly.
And so it's hard to find that balance. And I don't have any ill feelings towards anybody, any leader, anything that even anything like that. I can't remember their names if I could, And I'm sure that people have their own regrets, just like I do with my own mission. I think we all do live with our own regrets, um, but hopefully it's not debilitating. It's just enough to where it's just like that's just life. Honestly, my life was so rough before joining the church that like the mission was not much for me. Like I know it was for a lot of other people, but like you have these like people who are threatening and yelling at you, and I'm like, dude, my half my family's been in prison for like murder and other things like that. Like I am not scared of you yelling at me.
Yeah.
Like I come from a really rough background, and I just wasn't threatened by that, and so it was just like this sucks. But I saw a lot of people that got hurt by it that weren't ready for those kind of things.
Sure.
Um,
Yeah.
and couldn't handle it as well. I'm very like I'm not a fighter. I'm a very passive personality. I don't like contention and things like that. But
You're a peacemaker.
I'm a peacemaker, but I also like learned on my mission that when someone I care about is threatened, I get really defensive and really like on guard. Like
Mhm.
and that happened in Dunfermline. I'll share this one more story with you. Dunfermline, walking home from a member lesson that we had, And we had to walk because we missed the bus. And so we missed it by like 2 minutes, and we saw it driving away, and we're like, we've got to get in by whatever time it was, like 9 o'clock. And so we're trying to rush back to our flat, and we're in, let me tell you, we were in that little area just below Dunfermline at the bottom of the hill. Let me see here. Dunfermline, Rosyth.
Like Pit Reevy?
Yeah, Abbeyview.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So we're in Abbeyview, and so we've got probably 20 minutes if we can run back to the house. And it's starting to get dark, and we come across, we have to get, like, there's this big field, if you remember, in Abbeyview that like kind of goes along the trail to
Mhm.
our flats, like in the
Yep.
middle, and there's like all these things. Well, there's this trail, and we're going back, Elder Rich and I, and we see these drunk guys kind of ahead of us on the path, and we're like trying to get around them, but they're like right in the intersection where we need to get past to get to our flat. And it's dark; it's starting to get dark, and I'm like, these guys are gonna give us crap. Like, I don't want to deal with this right now. Like, whatever. So we just kind of go, and we go around them as much as we can. And as we're starting to go around, this group of guys starts coming towards us, and I'm like, oh. And I could tell that they're drunk. So they get in between Elder Rich and I, start to separate us. They push Elder Rich over here to the side and start yelling profanities at us. They're getting in Elder Rich's face, like in his face, yelling at him, just for being missionaries, right? And I'm like, whatever, I don't care. You can get in my face. And they're getting in my face. Two guys are getting in my face. Two guys get in Elder Rich's face. One of the guys goes, and I don't remember how it all happened, but all of a sudden I see Elder Rich go down. This guy smacked Elder Rich to the ground, and he was on the ground, had this big mark on his face, and I was fired up at that point. And I think that's when like that crazy part of me came out, and I was like, first thing that came to my mind was like, it's not you, it's the tag, it's not you, right? Like they're not
Yeah.
attacking you. And so I had to tell myself that. So that calmed me down, and I was able to just calmly say to the person after they'd knocked him down, they came up towards me, and I told him, run. I said, Elder Rich, run back to the house. And he started going ahead. They came after me, the four guys. And I just calmly said, and I felt like that was one of those like spirit, like I was not scared at all. I was just ready and felt protected. And I just said, if you try that with me, you're not going to get the same result. And
Great work. Great
they
work.
just backed off, and they let me through, and I just walked past, and I caught up with Elder Rich, and we got. But I was like, that was one of those nights I got home, and I'm like, why? Why would that happen? And then to my companion, this innocent kid who I love, hate, but like really truly love, right? That it broke my heart. And I went home and read the scriptures that night. And I remember it was like hearing about Paul's persecutions and hearing what they went through, and it's like, wow, this is nothing. Like this is something so small. I've been spit on. I've actually had all that stuff. I've been spit on, and I had a drunk guy grab my face and licked my face when I was like, it was like just the weirdest, wildest things. I saw a lady got murdered practically that we were teaching, like all this stuff that I didn't tell my mom until much later.
Yes.
And but you know, all this stuff that happened, and it was just, that's part of doing the Lord's work.
Yep.
And it was almost evidence of that, and it was comforting to me that there was this evidence of truth. Why would someone do that to anybody? Why would they do that to Paul? Why would they do all the things that they did to all of these missionaries? Every missionary
Mhm.
who has stood up for Christ and wore his name and testified for Christ has had to face some level of persecution.
Yep.
And I think that was calming for me to go home and just cool down a bit. I was still fired up, but I was like, at least knowing that there's just some evidence that what we're doing is right and good.
Mhm.
And anyway, it was just some crazy experiences, but all for the good.
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, one of the questions that we ask is any fond memories of President Sister Frederick or President Sister Griffiths that come to mind when you think about them.
President Sister Griffith or Sister Frederick was so funny. She was so caring and compassionate. Um, she just had that nurturing. I just remember her having there was such a difference and not a bad or good. It's just different in Sister Griffiths and Sister Frederick.
Mm-hmm.
And Sister Frederick was just had that very nurturing companionship kind of feel to President Frederick, like that, in a supportive role in that way. And I think that it was so. I knew I could talk to her. I talked to her a few times. I had several negative things happen to me on my mission, or not on my mission, but at home while I was on my mission. My brother went back to jail, and there was like a street fight, and my mom and stepdad and like two other people were involved, and like all this stuff happened, and I was like hearing all this stuff from home, and it was really hard at that time. And Sister Griffiths was reaching out to me and just very good at encouraging me. And when I talked to President Griffiths, when I received some of this bad news, because they're not members, they didn't have the kind of filter of knowing like you shouldn't share this stuff with a missionary while they're homesick and stuff like that. And so, anyway, but in some ways it was actually nice. I'm like, I don't want to go home to that. I'm happier here. It's fine.
Mm-hmm.
But it was. I don't know. I'm just trying to remember. Anyway, I just have a good memory of both of them. I think Sister Griffiths came in and she was kind of a powerhouse. She came in and like gave a first talk at a conference, and she was just like scriptures and had them memorized and was like talking and just new stuff. Like she was just like a powerhouse missionary, and I was like, wow, this is not. It's just different to what Sister Frederick was. And I think that President Griffiths was a lot more quiet and gentle, and I had all the explosion. I just came from like President Frederick showing me explosions happening and how we can move mountains, and like this guy is like this beating the crap out of me on Pratt's Hill, and he's like 3 times my age, and I'm like panting on the side, and he's just like, "Let's go! I'm gonna drink some honey and vinegar."
That's right.
And I'm like, this guy is making me feel like I am 90 years old compared to him. And I will always remember, I feel so bad. We had Sister, she's been on here actually, Sister Alexandra. Her Remini is her new name, but anyway.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Sister Barry. She was in my group, and we went up to Pratt's Hill together. And that poor girl, I don't even think she made it like quarter up the hill before she was on the side, and we were all just like, "Get up!" And she's like, I can't do it." Got it, but we got her up to the top. But it was just so funny seeing all the different people try and get up that hill.
Yeah, I understand that completely. Awesome. Well, Andrew, this has been awesome. Honestly, I have to commend you first and foremost, because I grew up in the church, and if I had the same task as you at 18 to join the church, take it in such a manner, intense way of learning about the gospel and then embracing it and then going on a mission to Scotland of all places. I mean, ultimately that would be a severe challenge in my life. So I commend you for your faith and the amazing experiences that you shared with us tonight. So thank you for that. Secondly, I want to express to you how much we love you. You're our brother in Scotland. We are so grateful for the service that you've rendered to the people there. I know for a certainty that many who you touched in their lives will always have fond memories of you, and will always think well of you and think often of who you are now and where you are and what you're doing. So continue to keep that spirit alive, communicate with those that you baptized, whether in or out of the church, if you can, share those experiences that you continue to have. And I know that you'll continue to be blessed. Ultimately, this is such a fun outlet for us to be
Yeah.
able to reminisce on a time that seems very far distant, but isn't as far as I'm sure we'll say in a future day. But more than anything, I again want to express to you how much we love you. You're one of our brothers in Scotland, and honestly, we're here for you in anything that you need.
Thank you. I appreciate it. One more thing that came to mind when you said that is something that did stick with President Frederick that he said in a conference once, and it still has stuck to me this day. Was he was sharing something that he learned from a leadership conference about his success as a mission president, and I think that that stuck with me and has been a motivation for me in a lot of ways. Was he basically said that the success of your presidency as a mission has to do more with where your missionaries are 10 years after their mission than than um, than how they're doing now on their mission.
Yeah.
And I think that that is for me has been, you know, not just this, but like going home and continuing to be part of missionary work and doing what I can and not being that member that's so difficult and won't give a ride to an investigator because you know how frustrating that is that you just want to give a ride or just want someone's house to teach in. And so like my wife and I have just been so open, and she served a mission too, and so I think we've both just been like we know what that's like to be on the other side, and we always want to make sure that we're proactive at doing missionary work and being a resource to missionaries, even in Rexburg where they have like 15 stakes for
Yeah.
missionaries, and we see them like once a year. But it's still continuing to do missionary work and not letting that part of us go. Not just saying that was 10 years ago. I had this mission experience, but um, really, I have some pretty neat experiences since I've been home with missionary work that have really helped strengthen my testimony. And so, anyway, that's just something that when you say President Frederick, that's something that he said that has stuck with me and has kept me going in a lot of ways.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure your experiences in missionary work now are significantly easier than they were over in the land that we love of Scotland, for sure.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you doing this and keeping it going. And I'm glad I could listen to some of the other people I got to know and didn't know a lot about, and I'm learning still now
Yeah,
from hearing about it. So thank you for doing it.
absolutely. And one last thing that we'll ask of you, Andrew, anyone you're still in contact with, we love referrals. Send them our way. They can go on the website 51spylaw.com, fill out that
Yeah.
fill out that contact sheet, and ultimately we'll get them on our schedule. That's the fun of this, is that the net continues to cast itself wider and wider. I mean, we talked to you tonight. We talked to a missionary just the other night who served from 2000 to 2002.
Oh
But
wow.
but because of the connection that we have, I mean, I don't know you at all, but
Yeah.
we love the land that we served in Scotland, and that's why this is such an amazing experience. So, thank you again for taking time.
You know, it's funny too as you say that, but it's like there are people that I know of from areas that I listened to like on your podcast because I was like I knew that members talked about this person. I remember their name.
Really, that's
Yeah,
so
yeah.
cool.
So I was like, I want to hear what this person's about because the people would talk about that missionary that
Hmm,
was way before me, um, and so I listened because everyone talked about Elder Osmond in
of
Dumfries,
course, yeah,
and so I was like, oh yeah, I knew who you served there. And then you guys did a podcast with him, so I'm like, I finally get to actually like hear this guy's voice that like they
yeah,
always talked about in this missionary, and like there's other missionaries too, and it's so weird how we are all connected. And sorry, I keep talking, but
you're good.
I can't remember, this was like 5 years ago. I was somewhere and I was sitting, and someone called my name out, and I was in a public area, and another person came over to me and said, did you serve in Scotland? And he was younger than me. I mean, I'm 36 now, so I was
Yeah.
like 32. And I was like, "Yeah." I mean, he goes, I've heard your name before, and I served in Scotland. I heard your name mentioned in one of the wards, and so I felt like I should
Wow.
talk to you and ask if you're Scot." I'm like, "What in the world?" like it's so weird. You don't know the influence that you have or other people have had, and it's just cool to hear that how we're all connected in some ways, you know. And I think that's what you said. There, we don't know each other, but there is that connection. So thanks
Yeah.
for keeping it going.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's a great deal of pleasure that we take from this. It's all amazing how everyone's experience is valid. You know,
Yeah,
you can't discount the fact that you were there for 18 to 24 months, busting your feet on those cobblestone roads and,
yeah,
you know, chapping your fingers till they were close to bleeding or freezing to death in the crazy winds that you had there. But more than anything, it's about building the camaraderie that we have, and I'm so grateful for it. I mean, looking back, we've been doing this almost 2 years now, and I don't think we've even scratched the surface with the opportunities that are continuing to come because there's so many more people. There's lists of names. They continue to get wider. What's that?
have you done over 100?
Oh, yeah, you're episode 173
Oh
of
my
of our
goodness,
interviews so far, and
that's
and I have a list that continues to grow, but my list right now is about 1,000 names.
dang.
So, and
Yeah, I tell you
honestly,
right when you hear a new name.
I'm telling you, man, this was one of my passion projects. Is I write everybody's
Oh man,
area and companion down, and then I have a spreadsheet with all of them written down. And the
yeah,
fun thing is, if I've missed some in other podcasts, I'm able to like plug them in when their other companions come on and be like, "I can't believe that he forgot to save me in this area," you know. So
yeah, for
it's a
sure.
lot of fun.
Are
I love it.
you in Utah?
I'm in Colorado.
Oh, in Colorado. What part?
I just live south of Denver in Highlands Ranch.
Oh, nice. That's cool. I like it
Yeah,
over there.
it is a great place. So,
It,
Andrew, again, thank you again for your time. We will get this out here in the coming week, and we'll communicate prior to it going live. But share it with anyone and everyone that you want to. I'm sure they'll love to hear not only your mission experience, but your conversion as well. So maybe there's some more missionary opportunities for you on the horizon with this one.
I'll take it.
I love it. All right,
All
brother.
right. Take
Cheerio.
care.
We'll talk more soon. Thanks.
All right. See you later. Bye.